If you can't explain what you do to another smart person, then maybe you don't know it very well.
And there's just a natural tendency to think that all the other trees in the forest are like the tree you happen to be standing next to at the time.
How do you get around the fact that there's a thing called AI?
They don't hire anybody that they don't think can make it all the way to the top.
Even if you're kind of doing things right, what is something that might be less obvious that could help somebody take the hiring decision to the next level?
It's almost like, lay down on the couch here and tell me your problems.
What are some reasons why a firm runner might want to listen to you instead of just going it alone?
What is happening for you in your job or in your life that has you in the frame of mind to think about a change?
Welcome to Max Value, the show for business owners and the trusted advisors who are on a mission to maximize their value with business valuation, exit planning, strategy, and a comprehensive view of the hiring landscape. I'm your host, Ben Town, and today we're going inside the talent market with John Borrowman of Borrowman and Baker. He's been recruiting in professional services and business valuation specifically since 1995. John sees the forest, not just the trees. And that vantage point really helps leaders avoid mishires, helps them move faster on offers, and really stop treating hiring like a commodity or just an unpleasant task. John, thank you for being here. Why don't you give a little bit of your professional background? How did you
Okay,
get
well,
here?
thank you. As it's usually the case, there's the story and there's the resume. So I'm going to start with the story. And that was like a lot of people who these days, I was working for, may have been in this situation. I was working for a small family owned company that was just about to be gobbled up by a bigger fish, which eventually was gobbled by an even bigger fish. And I knew from what I was hearing that I wasn't going to be happy there. And in that very moment, I got a phone call from an old friend whom I had met in recruiting many years earlier, who said, "Why don't you come back and let's work together?" He said, "I have discovered this thing called business valuation. So maybe we can do something with that." So that's essentially how it was. Now, that's the story. The resume is I was in recruiting for 5 years from 80 to 85. I went off and did other stuff. I came back in 95, and that's when I started business valuation. So there you go. There's two different, you pick the resume or pick the story.
Gotcha. Well, so you've been at this for, over 30 years. What are some reasons why a firm runner might want to listen to you instead of just going it alone, like mostly they do?
Yeah. Okay. Well, um, I guess I'll start by telling you that if you spoke to my wife, she would tell you that it's simply in my nature to expect to be listened to. So there's that. However, seriously, it's the perspective. As you said earlier, it's seeing the forest for the trees. Okay. Even people who work in this profession for a very, very long time may only see a half a dozen different trees, okay, in terms of practices where they are. And there's just a natural tendency to think that all the other trees in the forest are like the tree you happen to be standing next to at the time. And so it's just not that way. Um, I think my perspective also includes the ability to talk about what does get candidates' attention, how to deal with them, how to move through the hiring process. I think we're probably going to cover some more of that in the rest of the conversation.
Gotcha. Well, and in particular, you've given presentations to various groups that I'm part of, including the Cal CPA BV section. You came out here to California to do that with us, and that was great. And as part of that, I really picked out one of the infographics that I thought was really really great. And you've brought that slide today to show us, at least for the people watching it on YouTube and not hearing it on audio. Uh, why don't we bring that up and we can talk through that real quick? I just think it's so illustrative to talk through an infographic like that. that maps out, some of the ideas that you're thinking of.
Thank you. Um, while we're waiting for that to come up, I guess I'll go ahead and say that certainly in the business valuation field, there is really a unique hiring challenge. Okay. And in my experience, that comes up because those of you who do that are literally in a business of judgment. Okay. When your deliverable is an opinion or a conclusion of value, you're in the business of judgment. Okay. And this slide that I brought is intended to kind of illustrate how that hiring challenge plays out very practically when it comes to hiring talent. So start with imagining in your mind's eye an organizational pyramid. Okay? Very simple, very simple. And then you draw a horizontal red line somewhere between a fourth and a third of the way up from the baseline. Now, if you are hiring people who function below that line, and I'm not talking job titles, I'm talking function, you've got a lot of options, okay? You can bring them from the estate department, the trust and estate departments in banks. You can bring them from FP&A. You can bring them from a lot of places. But the problem is, if you are hiring above that line for somebody who functions above that line, your only choice, your only option is to get them from the profession itself. And that's probably the thing that has just results in a very persistent labor shortage in business valuation.
Well, and John, I think one of the issues that we've always seen kind of in the old school problem is the master and apprentice relationship to get somebody from that lower layer up to the top of the pyramid. And it's not a problem, it's great, that absolutely works, but it's not so easy to do in a labor constrained market like we have across most professions right now, and up to and including business valuation, where you need to have that person start with you, be interested in the field, be satisfied enough to stick around, and be incentivized enough to climb the ranks. It absolutely still happens, and oftentimes that can be the best way. But when you don't have that natural succession, then you got to go somewhere else. You got to figure it out, and that's where you come in.
It is really tough. That it is hard to do, but one of the things I enjoy is working with employers in meeting that objective. You know, getting that person on board that really makes a difference for them.
Well, one of the things I really liked about the infographic specifically is that it's really simple. I think most effective infographics really are simple. And also it kind of looks like the Pink Floyd album cover with the triangle and the bisecting line there.
Well, there's that.
Now that we're talking about, there are different pools to fish in, and there are different types of fish that you're going for. I'm maybe taking this fishing metaphor a little too far, but how do you talk about getting that right person? How do you know when they're the right one? How do you know you're getting the person with the right skills for the position?
Good question. I think that um, the approach here falls into two buckets or two tracks, so to speak. Um, it is important when you're hiring to focus on the one hand on the analytical and the other hand writing, because writing is so very, very important in this profession. And then the analytical skills, they're good, but they won't do the job by themselves. So when it comes to measuring those analytical skills, I think one of your best bets, frankly, is a case study that you put together using the financials from one of your clients. You anonymize them, and you can give a sheet that shows multiple years, at least 5 or 6 years of financials, And then you can ask questions. So to invite the person to talk about what they're seeing there and what happened and what is the advice that they would be giving to that particular client, given the situation they're seeing in front of them. Now, the case study like that, although it is, it's a really good hiring tool, it's just not very good if you're trying to hire at an entry level. Because these people just, they won't have the experience and the wherewithal to be able to answer that question. So, at a very least, again, in the category of analytical, you should be working with an Excel skills test. Okay? Very simple. You can get it off the shelf. You could easily put one together in a way that correlates with the kind of work that you do. So you're getting an extra detailed understanding of not only what they know, but what else you're going to have to teach. Okay? So that's the analytical side. On the writing side,
Judd, let me stop you there
yeah.
real quick. I mean, do you recommend that people do those tests live in front of you? Because I can think sometimes when I'm presenting something to a client and suddenly we have to do a little bit of math and then suddenly I don't know Excel anymore.
Well, the case study should be done live. Okay? I think even if it has to be done via video, that's okay, but you want it done live. You want it done in real time. Okay? The Excel test, not so much, but it does certainly need to be a timed test, so you can see what your candidate accomplishes and what they don't. All right. All right. You may not need to be monitoring them in real time, but so that's what I'd say about how you deliver them. Okay. Now on the other side, the writing. Okay, we talked about analytical writing. On the writing side, I have found that it's not uncommon that an employer will ask for a writing sample or maybe even an actual report. It gets a little bit dicey, okay, because candidates are understandably reluctant to be sharing reports for the clients that they've worked on. Sometimes they might be okay if it is anonymized, if certain data is redacted. But even so, as an employer, you have to be careful about, who really wrote it. Okay? Is it the work of the person you're talking to, or is it the work of a team that person was part of, or it was that person's work heavily edited? Okay, so you got to think about those things. Now, I always suggest what I think is a pretty creative approach to another way to look at writing, and that is to, especially again, maybe with more toward entry level people, and that would be to assign an industry report. Okay. Now you think, holy cow, what do I do that? Well, here's what you do. You choose an industry segment in a specific location where there's going to be lots of public data. Okay. All right. You might um, you might tell them, give me an industry report on bars in Milwaukee. Give me one on coffee shops in Seattle, oil field services in Tulsa, okay? Or restaurants wherever. You can choose them and you can see how well your candidate does or not in that kind of writing assignment. And that's also useful because you get a little touch of analytical in there as well, okay? So analytical and writing is what I would say.
How do you get around the fact that now there's a thing called AI that, is the bane of, every high school teacher, out there, where kids and, now, applicants can use that to, zhuzh up whatever they write or, out of whole cloth, make an answer for them.
Oh boy, that is a tough one. That is a tough one, and I think, hey, At a minimum, you should ask for an assurance from your candidate that this is their work and their work alone. Okay. Um, I would hate to think that someone would actually lie about that if confronted with that kind of a question or request for a confirmation. Um, this also it's a good question, Ben, because it also brings us back to whether some kind of writing assignment should be monitored in real time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, I guess that's the best thing I can say. It's a good question and something that is going to pop up. You just have to be prepared for it.
Mhm. And I will say one of the because we have international team, and one of the things that we do have to worry about is the fit of communication. It's not necessarily that we need to fit it in the same exactly the same form or the same way that I might say something. My cohort in India might say it a different way, and that's perfectly fine. But we always run them through, any potential new hire. We want to make sure the writing skills are really good. The spoken skills, you can make it work. You can always get there as long as it's a reasonable level. But the writing where there's no additional context, you're just reading an email. What's there is what's there. You got to know. Um, and fortunately, we've been very we've been very fortunate, I'll say, to get people who can communicate very well in writing. So it is definitely different, looking at the different forms of communication, written versus spoken versus other.
Oh, it is. And as you're talking about that, one of the things I'm thinking about is um, boy, the difficulty of teaching that. Okay. Um, I guess you can coach on how to put the words together. You can coach on what to say and what not to say, but there's just something extra that's difficult to define in the candidate who really can write. Okay. Uh, and boy, and do you? Boy, no, I'm sorry. Now you really got me going here. Do you? How much risk do you take with someone who may come out really terrific on the analytical, but you got some question about the writing, and do you say to yourself, well, I think we can bring them along. I think we can train them. It's a tough call. It really, really is a tough call. And this, like I said, was said earlier, this is a business of judgment. So it's important to understand how people apply that judgment and articulate that judgment.
Correct.
That's really what it's about.
I was going to say that it's two sides of the coin, though. It's the judgment as well as the communication of said judgment. Otherwise, nobody knows how smart you are, right? If you can't explain to generally we're talking with pretty smart people. We're talking with an attorney. We're talking with a another CPA, another accountant. We're talking with a judge. We're talking with the business owner, depending on the venue. But all these people are good at something, right? It may not be the thing we're good at, but they're smart. If you can't explain what you do to another smart person, then maybe you don't know it very well. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's sometimes you say something that goes ding, and I'm thinking of, see, I think this is a place where the behavioral interviewing approach can be useful because very often the behavioral interviewing approach is is characterized by questions like, tell me a story about. Okay. And so that's a really good opportunity to see how articulate, coherent, or not your candidate is in explaining those kinds of things. Okay. Um, and one of my favorites would be especially if you're hiring above that line, that red line. Tell me about a time when you had to explain to a client that the value of their business isn't what they thought it was. Okay, and because you may well be hiring for a role that requires that.
Right. And I think the important a really important point that you made right there was about, are you hiring for above the line or below the line, or below the line with the expectation that you're going to move above the line, whatever, right? That the eventual limit on that person may end up being around the communication, because I do think that as you progress, you get technical knowledge, which is then requisite in order to be able to communicate that technical knowledge at a higher level eventually. But some people, I think, to your point, don't develop that second part, or not as much, or whatever. Oftentimes, I think because they may be closeted in a bigger firm, or kind of protected from having to do some of that by the nature of their work, whatever. And look, that's not necessarily the funnest part always. I mean, it is actually the fun part for me, communicating with the client, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to be walking and that's totally okay. But it can be limiting in the career path.
No, that's true, and um, it can leave employers facing a I don't know if you'd call it a conundrum, but certainly a difficult decision. One approach to hiring and building a practice is that, if you got good talent, we'll make a place for you. Okay. Um, I'll give you as an example. I once worked with somebody I had a lot of respect for. And one of the things he used to say consistently was, John, I'm not looking for a round peg in a round hole, or a square peg in a square hole. I'm looking for a quality peg, and we'll make the hole. Okay. Now, and he lived up to it. Okay. There's that. But then there's also the view, which I have known other employers to take. They don't hire anybody that they don't think can make it all the way to the top, you know, just from the get go. All right. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to make it to the top. There's always a filtering out process. Who knows what's going to be happening. Okay. Um, but, there's just two different approaches, two different points of view. Well, anyway, as someone who's doing some hiring, it's something that you really just have to keep in mind. It's all you can do.
And we do the best we can. I mean, honestly, I'm a professional evaluator and exit planner, but also we get to be small business owners as well, and go through the hiring process and learn all the other skills that we've never been taught before.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. Okay.
Everybody, I want to take a second here to share something about who we are and why we make this show. You're probably here because either you or a client of yours is thinking about buying or selling a business, bringing in investment, or planning an eventual exit. And that is why we call this show Max Value. We provide you with information and insights about how to maximize the value of your business. Our team at Town Advisory guides business owners through the crucial, often once in a lifetime opportunity to exit their business. We use our trademarked Exit Builder program to help business owners prepare early, protect the value they've built, and obtain maximum value through an exit. And the secret is, our clients define what value means to them. Taking the right steps now can make all the difference in creating a successful outcome for yourself, your family, and your work team. If you think you're ready for the next step in understanding and increasing the value of your business, make a comment, send me a message on LinkedIn, or send me an email. All those links are in the show notes. So, okay, yeah, let's go to the lightning round and punch up the pace a little bit. First question. I'm a small business owner in a specialized professional practice. What are 3 top mistakes that somebody like me is probably making in hiring?
Okay, okay. Well, um, it's not hard to come up with three, but or maybe more. But I see if I can. One of them is, um, using a job description as bait. People don't respond. I see stuff postings and it just reads like the job description. Okay. People aren't attracted to job descriptions because they already have a job. What they are attracted to is a story about how things can be better. All right. And sometimes employers may say, well, gee, I don't, when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to articulate your own story. I'll give you that. Here's a trick. Ask the people who work for you. Okay? I got it over here. So ask, what would you tell people are the most fun and interesting parts of this job? They'll tell you. Okay? And that gives you material to use. What was the most interesting thing you learned when you did this job? Okay? And finally, here's what's my favorite. What do you tell people when you want to brag about what it's like to work here? The answers you get to that are going to be the content you need to tell the story of your practice. Okay? So again, the first thing is trying to using a job description as bait. Doesn't work. Okay? Secondly, not making the process a priority. And I'm talking about that in two ways. One is everybody has a daily to-do list, okay? And you'll write in hire, but whatever, somewhere on that list, okay? And if you're like everybody else, over the course of a day or multiple days, or that list just moves up and down. Something else comes in. Well, okay, we move it down. What you should do is make the hiring process its own to-do list. Okay? It'll give you the advantage of having a specific place to focus, and it will also force you to think about and act on all of the individual steps you got to take to make that happen. Okay? I mean, there's that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? What? One bite at a time. Okay? So that's how that's separate. Now, the other thing about not making the process a priority is that too many employers in the process, they're interviewing, they don't bring their A game. And what I mean by that is they don't do what they said they would do. Okay? Now, example, look, you tell a candidate, look, I'll get back to you on Wednesday. You don't get back to them on Thursday or Friday. Okay? Well, look, you know how it is in your practice. You're busy, and you're going to cut yourself some slack for not meeting that deadline. Well, your candidate knows nothing about that. They only know how you're treating them. Okay? And they think the way you hire is the way you manage. They will. Okay? It's just what they do. Okay? And I was thinking about this. Something comes in that I think it's easy to do, probably even normal, and that is jumping the gun in your thinking that this person is hired. And what I mean by that is that, if you spent very much time in the process, and most employers do, you get kind of frustrated, and then maybe the perfect person shows up. You interview them, and you immediately think, yep, that's the one. Not unusual at all. And what you'll do is you'll check that little box in your head that says hiring, done. And what you ignore is your candidate isn't even close. They've got other questions. They want to meet other team members. If you jump the gun and make that assumption, what typically happens is you make that assumption and you're off doing something else. Okay? You think it's done. No, it's not done. So that's a kind of a mistake I see people making, is it's not wrapping it up in the way that they really should. Okay?
I mean, that's really interesting. That's kind of, yeah, that's like spiking the ball on the 1 yard line, right?
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah.
almost did it. You almost made it. Didn't get the score. The Okay, so thanks for those three items. And like you said, I'm sure there's a lot more. And actually, on that score, even if you're kind of doing things right and you're avoiding most of the major landmines, what is something that might be less obvious, uh, that you could overcome or think about that could help somebody, again, like me, take the hiring decision to the next level.
Okay, okay. I think the thing that comes to mind there, Ben, is that it's easier to overpay than you think. Give you an example. I'll talk to an employer and about what their need is, and they'll talk about a compensation range. Okay. And my view of the lower end of the range is, that's doable. That'll get it. And of course, I look at the top end of the range and I'm thinking, whoa, yeah, that would really be attractive to some people. Okay. But the problem I also notice at the same time is that the person you hire who has to have that higher salary could also be someone who walks in the door with expectations about the speed of their advancement and their growth and their pay that will simply go unfulfilled. Okay. And it's I think you and I talked about this before. It's like a day one, day two kind of a thing. So what is this person going to be doing down the road? Are they going to grow at the pace that you're ready to put into somebody? Do they fit within the scope of what you have in mind for that role? Okay. Yeah. Hey, it can be very, very tempting to hire HIRE at that higher HIGHER level. Okay. Because you think, oh, wow, it would be so great to have somebody I could just hand this work to and they could knock it out. That's really attractive. But they'll probably get tired of just knocking it out pretty quickly, you know?
Right.
And then anyway, you're lost. You got a problem
You're
there.
back to
Okay.
square one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. That one's good. Uh, last quick one. What's an overused interview question that everybody should retire immediately?
okay. And, okay. It's a question that I really, well, here's the question everybody asks. Why are you thinking about leaving?
Mm-hmm. I've caught myself with that one.
Everybody uses it. Okay. Why are you thinking about, and it's normal. It's normal to ask that question. But here's the two reasons that it's the wrong question. Okay. Um, First of all, it could well be that the candidate came to this conversation not having made a decision to leave. Right. So first of all, there's whoa, like that. The other problem is more psychological. Okay. Because whenever you ask a question that starts with why, the brain just automatically scrambles in search of the answer. And there never is the answer. Okay. And if you want to test yourself on that, just remember when your mom asked you why you put that empty water jug back in the refrigerator. Okay. Or your dad asked you, how come you brought the car home without filling it up with gas? You don't have an answer for that, and neither will your candidate. So what do you ask instead?
Well,
Why?
it certainly doesn't work with my 13-year-old, I will say.
No, it never worked with me when I was 13. I'll tell you that. Um, okay, so what is the question? It's basic sales 101. Okay, if you're if someone walks into your auto dealership, you want to know what brought them in the door. Are do they have a checkbook in hand and they're ready to write you a check for a car today? Or are they at the very beginning of their process? So what do you ask your candidate? What is happening for you in your job or in your life that has you in the frame of mind to think about a change. Okay. And you'd be amazed at what you learn. Okay. Um, you may hear, well, I just got divorced and I'm taking the kids and moving back closer to home. Okay, not going to have to worry about a counter offer there. Okay. Um, sometimes, here's more interesting. Sometimes you might hear your candidate talk about a problem which is not going to get fixed simply because they come to work for you. You know, because there's that. All right. Um, at any rate, it's what is happening for you in your job, in your life, that puts you in the frame of mind to make a change. Okay.
I love that it's in a certain sense it's the same question, but it is a little bit more vagued up, uh, and it's a takes it from a multiple choice answer to a short response, open answer type of question. So that's always good.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's I don't know if you want to stretch the stretch it that far, but it's almost like well, lay down on the couch here and tell me your problems, kind of thing. It's just a shrink, just opened them up, and you'd be amazed at what you hear, and it gets you right to it. It gets you right to what you want to know. Okay, right off the bat. All right, so there you go. Sorry, long-winded answer, but there you go.
Well, I don't know if a lightning round is always the appropriate way to label that, but it's a
Right.
let's talk about some other stuff. That's really what I should call it.
Oh, any other
Um,
stuff? Sure, I'm good with other stuff.
Other stuff is good. But speaking of, I mean, you've given a lot of really, really good insight into the hiring process and what people should be considering, especially small business owners like myself. Um, Now, let's get to know you a little bit. Uh, I want to know, what are some things that are personal to you that are not on your LinkedIn or your website profile?
Okay. All right. Um, well, one thing that tends to come up in those kinds of conversations is that um, I am one of a shrinking number who actually got to see the Beatles live. Okay, many years ago, many years ago. But there's that. Um, I actually have conducted the Houston Grand Opera Orchestra. Okay,
That's cool.
a lot of fun, a lot of fun, I tell you. And
Wait, do you know how to conduct? I mean, not, I don't know. I mean,
oh
with
well,
the
yeah, yeah,
on and everything. Oh, okay.
I
That's
could.
cool.
um, well, enough to do what I needed to do. It was in an opera. Um, and finally, um, maybe people have been taking note of my voice. I don't know. A lot of people do, and I get asked, you ever been on television? Or no, the answer is no. But one thing I have done is that I have read books, which you can now find in the talking books section of the Library of Congress. I read, I can remember, it was many years ago, but I can remember a whole slew of Zane Grey Westerns. Okay. So, yes, you can check my voice out of the Library of Congress.
Like the Riders of the Purple Sage, all those classics. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The yeah, hopefully everybody has noticed your silky voice. It really is wonderful to listen to. Maybe you should do those ASMR videos on YouTube so people can fall asleep to your voice describing reading the phone book or something, right? All right. So why is what you do rewarding?
I, I'm just into being of service. I really am. It's maybe it's a bit cliched these days, but I genuinely am. Um, I always want to be of whatever, when somebody reaches out to me, my response is I always want to be of whatever service I can be. We don't know what that is, but we'll talk. You know, could be this, could be that, don't know. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Okay.
And I'll put something on that for myself. The way you and I got connected was, I don't know, somebody recommended that I give you a call. Just I was thinking through some things in my career as a BV expert, and they said, well, you should talk to this guy, John Borrowman. He's out there. He's one of the few people who specializes in that field, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just a really great conversation, and you provided a lot of insight. And I wasn't gonna, at that point anyway, gonna turn into a potential candidate so that you could place me anywhere, as it turned out. Uh, but that kind of really sparked the my recognition that you're just a really authentic guy and you really are helpful, and the just the fact that you were willing to take a bunch of time with somebody you didn't know like me to do that really led me down this path of I want to get to know this guy better.
Well, thank you, and that really represents it better than I could say it. You know.
Awesome. All right, we're all lifelong learners. What is it that you're reading or trying to ingest right now, that's entertaining you?
Oh, okay. Well, I I focus on nonfiction. Uh, Not what I'm reading right now, but I'm just telling you, I focus on nonfiction, and I tend to concentrate on um, 19th century American history. However, I just picked up a book, and I've got the title here, titled "The Crazies: The Cattleman, the Wind Prospector, and a War Out West," and it's a very uh, engrossing story about how some very wealthy landowners in Montana were just all in on private property rights until one of their neighbors, who wasn't as wealthy, decided he wanted to put up a wind farm. And so the book is about how that battle played out in the courts over a number of years, and really quite fascinating because it's relevant in terms of wind farms and public utilities and what we're facing today. It's really a fascinating story.
So that sounds like it's something a little bit more recent, obviously.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's very recent. And I'm not at the end, so as far as I know, it may still be ongoing in some respect.
Fair point.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. I know that you've created a bunch of really helpful tools that people can go and read at borrowmanbaker.com. That'll be in the show notes. The link to that link to your website. On there are some videos that have some of these tips and tips and tricks, but really it's just compressed wisdom and knowledge about hiring and working with candidates and going through that process. And also, you have a BV practice management toolkit that you helped develop. I think it with BVR, Business Valuation Resource. I can't recall.
No, I think that was through. Boy, it was a while back, but I think it was through AICPA.
CPA. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
I contributed a chapter to the BB practice,
There we go.
whatever they were putting together at the time, and it was very complimented to be asked to participate in that. It was
Well,
fun.
you're a high profile guy, so it makes sense. Do you have anything that you want to offer? Any member of the audience here?
Well, the only thing is, if you got a question, you're not really certain. We can talk about compensation. We can talk about advancement. Just give me a call or reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I assume that somewhere in the show notes be a phone number, maybe an email address. Just reach out. We'll set up something. Um, Depending on what the issue is, we might start with a real short conversation and then we can just decide whether we want a longer one. But don't hesitate, okay? I'm not out to try to sell you anything. Really not. Is offer whatever advice could be helpful, and maybe we'll go from there. Okay?
Absolutely. Well, and that's exactly why I kind of told the introductory story between you and I, because That's exactly true. And I'll be I'll testify to it first. Um, yeah, you're great to work with. Thank you.
Thank you. I just enjoy this. I'm not sure. Well, I enjoy recruiting, and I'm an amateur psychologist, and I enjoy all the people I've ever met in this profession. So that's nice too.
Yeah, mostly good people. Mostly good people
Yeah,
I've run across
yeah.
for sure. So people can find you at your information that we'll put in the show notes. And John, it's been really lovely having you here, and the conversation's been great. And you always provide something interesting and fresh, and it always has a touch of erudition and wisdom to it. And I just really love that about you.
Oh,
We've really
erudition and wisdom. I hope my wife is listening.
we're recording it, fortunately, so she
Well,
can.
well,
You can put her
I'll
on loop.
she's going to have to watch. There's no doubt. She's going to have to watch.
She can subscribe then too.
Oh,
Okay.
that's it. That's it. That's it. Hey, thanks, Ben. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks again.
Thanks, God. Really appreciate it, man.
You
Cheers.
bet.
That's a wrap. You've been listening to Max Value Podcast. And if this episode provided any interesting information, hit that subscribe button, smash like, and drop a comment below. I'm Ben Town with Town Advisory, and I'll catch you next time.